Ladies and gentlemen, I am here today with actress, dancer, superhero, Sophie Cook. Thank you for coming in today,
That
Sophie.
was an awesome intro.
I'm slowly getting better at these. I noticed all my intros, I tend to do the same thing. I start with ladies and gentlemen and then the person. So I'm trying to kind of mix it up a bit. I gotta add more.
Oh,
damn,
we were
snap,
on the roll for that. That was good. Okay, cool.
So thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
For those listening in, tell them a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, where you're from.
So my name is Sophie, as he said. I'm originally from Florida. I was raised there, and I moved to Los Angeles about just over 4 years ago, August of 2013. And it's been a journey. I started out as a professional dancer. I was a former Miami Heat dancer, and I was going to school at the same time. I graduated, and I was like, okay, I don't feel like I am progressing as much as I want to anymore. So that's when I decided to make the move out to Los Angeles, and I started continuing dancing, and it's been amazing. And then, life happens, you go over some hurdles and you find yourself, and then I started transitioning more into acting and I guess action acting as well too, because I really want to specialize more in action films and television. And I'm half Japanese, half American as well too, so.
Shout out to the half Asians out there.
What's up, y'all?
I think I've only mentioned this one other time. I am half Filipino for the record. I look white. I don't have an Asian look to me.
Not at all.
But I am, so damn it, I'm representing.
Yeah, and I do speak a little bit of Japanese, but not as well as I should, so that's another thing that I'm kind of working on, or I guess a little fun fact about me, kind of. I don't know if it's really fun, but I think it's fun. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I love dancing and moving around, and I like, food. I like food.
I like food.
And
it's
eating.
a big one.
Yeah.
I would say, too bad you can't make a job doing that, but these days you actually can make a job doing that.
You actually can. You really can.
So one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is this new angle I'm switching to is all about life fulfillment. We were talking about this before we started recording, how people are so much quicker to not follow through and make excuses for why they haven't followed through versus doing it. And what's so cool about your story, as people already heard, was like, you were a dancer, you're doing acting, you also did a lot of traveling, like you're doing all these little things that I think people would want to do at least one of those things you just said. So it's like, how does one even start to get into that and give themselves that opportunity?
It's important to really just know where you're at in life and being in tune with that. And I think a lot of people are focusing so much about the future and where they want to be in the future, and they're not thinking about the now. And so there's been so many times where I'm like, okay, I paved this perfect and beautiful path, and I'm like, this is where I'm going to go, this is what I'm going to do, and then I just don't walk on that path. But then I learned to realize that I just need to think about what's happening now in the moment, and then life itself will kind of pave its own path and figure itself out from there, if that makes any sense. I just think what's happening with me is that I've traveled a lot, and majority of my travels have been through work, which I'm extremely grateful for, but that was not my intention ever. My dream as a little girl was to be a professional ballet dancer, to be a principal in a ballet company. I never did that, but I did end up becoming a professional dancer, and that allowed me to travel and to go on tours and do all of that. And again, that was really just because I was thinking about the now and what happened in the moment. So kind of in a nutshell, I want to say my little story of what made me transition out of ballet. I ended up getting injured. I pulled a ligament in my hip that kind of opened me up to different styles of dance, like hip hop and contemporary. It's not as strenuous on your body, and it's a blessing in disguise, because if I never got injured, I probably wouldn't even be living in Los Angeles right now. I would be in a ballet company doing that, which is amazing because that was my little girl dream. But when I got injured, I was devastated, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to dance in this ballet company, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. But then I was like, wait, can I turn this into an opportunity of what's happening at this moment? Okay, this sucks. I got injured, but our bodies healed itself. I was still young, and I'm like, let me see what else I can do that I will be able to love and enjoy, and take that. And so rather than thinking so far into the future as to, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to do this because this is what I had planned for so long, I just thought about what was happening in the moment, how my body was feeling, how I was feeling myself mentally, not just physically. And I kind of just went with that. And I think that's something that a lot of us lag in. And it took a while for me to learn, but still learning.
There's two parts of that I like, kind of intertwine. I like that, so like you were saying, you went into ballet, that was your ultimate dream, but you didn't let yourself be handicapped, I guess if that's the right word. In other words, it wasn't like once you got injured and ballet was out, you just gave up. Mm-hmm. Like you always saw it as an opportunity, and once you get that foot in the door, it leads you to other opportunities. So like you discovering being a dancer for the Heat or getting out here to LA to act, none of those steps would have happened unless you originally went for that goal of trying to be a ballet dancer. Right. So the reason I bring that up is because I feel like so many people, if I were to take your story and say to someone else who's interested in, let's say, being a ballet dancer and saying, hey, you should go do this, they'd probably just give you excuses like, you know how hard it is to become a ballet dancer, it's never going to happen. And when it fails, what am I going to do? Nothing. And then I'm stuck with no job 20 years later. But it's like, boom, you're living proof where it was like, hey, that was what you wanted to do as a kid, but you found other routes within that, and it's becoming even more fulfilling because of that, because you're learning all these new skills.
And we're constantly changing as people, and I feel like as we get older, our likes and interests change. And I always knew that dance and movement was my passion in my life, and entertainment and performing. But when I was 10 years old, did I ever think that this would be where I'm at now? No, absolutely not. And even so now, I feel like 10 years from now, I don't even know where I'm going to be, but I know I have a rough idea, but I'm like, I'm not going to think 10 years from now, okay, this is exactly where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do, because things change and you never know what's going to happen. So it's important to just have an open mind.
Oh, for sure. And in the book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, Cal Newport talks about that. He says passion doesn't exist in terms of like, you don't just wake up one day and say, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Maybe in rare cases, like a basketball player or someone has had that. Mm-hmm. But it ends up, more often than not, it ends up being a journey similar to yours, where you have an interest, you might not necessarily know where it's going to go, and you pursue that, and through those experiences, whether good or bad, as long as you learn those lessons, you end up finding your passion through that. Because like you said, as you get older, your interests change. So that's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who does over-plan like that instead of just getting started? How can they kind of get over that hump? Because that's a hard habit to break.
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially if you have if you're kind of like a perfectionist and you just want everything to go exactly the way you want it to, it's really just a matter of trying to be as open-minded as possible. And it's so much easier said than done, because I feel like this kind of mentality grows with us, right? Like you start out young, and if you're used to or even raised in a household that everything is completely planned out, and your mom or your dad has something written on a whiteboard, like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, this is what we're going to do, you're used to that, right? So breaking out of that is probably even more difficult for somebody who has been raised in that kind of environment, or whereas another person, maybe it wasn't as planned in a sense. And I think it's really just self-awareness. And I think breaking out of that, again, is just thinking more about now and just trying your hardest to just like breathe, take a step back, and look at what's happening right in front of you. And it's going to take a while to kind of really look at what's in front of you, because you think like, oh, I see this microphone that's right in front of me, and I'm looking at that. But it goes so much more than that. And I don't really think there's necessarily like a technique or anything. It's just kind of going day by day, thinking about the now, like, okay, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, I have my day, I get my day started, do whatever, I do my thing, and then at night, I'll reflect on my day. Because before, there would be times that like, the day after, I'd be like, wait, what did I do yesterday? Or what did I eat? Or what did I this? And I don't even remember. So now I'm like, okay, let me just try to reflect on what happened that day, like what I liked, what I didn't, what could be improved. And I think that's where I really just started, because I was always kind of more of a planner. And now, I mean, thankfully I grew up in a very open-minded household, but you know, when you're Japanese, it's very structured. And my mom is Japanese, and so she just had everything very, very structured for me. So I grew up in that kind of environment. So breaking out of it really was difficult, and it was really just reflecting on the now and what I did just that day and thinking about that. And I think that has helped me just think about now.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Is it's the small things. Like, I realize the solutions to all our problems are so simple yet so hard to implement. Like you said, all you have to do is pay more attention in the moment rather than the future, stuck in the past, and you can figure out what it is that speaks to you and what's easy. And yet that's so hard for people. That's awesome. You were saying you grew up in a very structured environment. How did growing up with that type of culture and mentality shape you to how you are now?
I think it helped a lot, actually, but it was very difficult because since I am pursuing the entertainment industry, it took a lot for me to convince my mom that this is the right path for me. But at the same time, I think that structure has helped me be able to organize my life a lot more than, I guess, the average person who never had that and is still pursuing the entertainment industry. Because anybody who knows who is a dancer, an actress, a model, or any of that, or comedian, or any of that type of sort, they know that every single day is different. Like, you have no structure in your life whatsoever.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite. So I think because I did have some kind of structure, I'm almost able to structure my crazy unstructured life in a sense of like, not necessarily planning, but I know like, okay, I know that every day is going to be different, but I know that I am able to manage it because I do have this structured background of being organized and having that tough love environment of having thick skin and just being like, you know what? I can fight through this, I can do that, and good to go.
Nice. That's a big thing I'm gonna get into. Again, me being half Filipino, I will interview my mom at some point. Is I love hearing, especially people who come from more cultured backgrounds, is that story, because everyone has a different story growing up, and it totally shapes the way their work ethic is, the way they see opportunities, whether good or bad. So I like hearing it because I'm sure there's someone else out there hopefully listening to this that'll hear yours and say, oh, I grew up in the same culture and maybe they had the opposite problem. It was, oh, I'm too structured, I don't know how to break out. Or someone maybe who didn't have structure and they're either hearing, oh, here's how I make structure out of chaos. So that's awesome that you shared that. Thank you. We're gonna take a little, this is the first time I'm doing this. We'll see how it goes. We're gonna switch to a game. Yeah. I've never done this before. It's a new little segment I'm trying out because I'm all about coming out of my shell more, helping my guests come out of their shell more, and just be me because I like being silly, being goofy, having enjoyments. So the first game we are going to attempt is a version of charades, and it's going to be animals. So what she is going to have to do, we're going to switch off on this. We'll go a minute each.
I love animals.
I have it on my phone. I'm going to place it on my forehead, and you're going to, to the best as you can, act it out. But if you can't, if it's something crazy, like, I don't even know, something I don't even know, either tell me pass or just describe it. Okay. So we'll see. We'll go the first minute. Let me know when the minute is up.
Cool.
Here we go. Oh, is it starting? Okay. Oh boy, here we go. Here we go.
Oh man. It has
unicorn? She's making a
It
unicorn.
reminds me of a unicorn.
Rhinoceros.
Yes.
Ooh, all right.
Wow. I don't know how you got that. Wait, it didn't. Okay.
Oh, shit.
All right. Cool. We gotta pass on this one.
Apparently I don't know how to quit.
Oh!
Screaming monster. Wolf.
Yeah. Come out in the night. Dang.
Here, I'm gonna let you hold this. That'll probably be
Okay.
easier.
Cool.
Frankenstein. That's not an animal. Bear.
No, I have spots. I'm just kidding. Black. I'm
Oh,
black.
panther. Jaguar.
No. Yeah, there you go, Jaguar.
Okay. I'm not
Gosh darn it.
It's not
Why
working.
okay, I have no idea what the heck this is. Fish? It's a kind of fish?
Salmon.
No.
Mackerel.
No,
Swordfish.
alright. Time was up. It was cod.
Cod.
How to describe that?
Okay. How did I do? Final score was. I only got 3? Dang.
I think I accidentally passed on,
Oh, it's all good.
on one of them. So
Okay.
you got 4.
Alright, 4. So you've got to beat 4 now.
Oh gosh.
I'll hold it. Here we go.
Okay.
Ready? Let's see how good I am at this. I like to think I'm pretty decent.
Gosh darn it, I'm not very
What
good.
the hell is this? Up next.
Was it people?
It was not. Alright. That's good. They make sushi out of these. It's a fish.
Yellowtail?
It's like a bumblebee.
Like a bumblebee?
No, like bumblebee.
It's not like uni.
I'll pass it.
Okay.
I'm not giving you problems yet. Oh.
Horse.
But in the water.
Seahorse.
All right.
That's good.
Oh, I passed it. Oops. What are you supposed to do if it does it right? Skip that one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, these are a lot more difficult than
Oh, you must learn to practice.
tiger,
Young.
cricket, grasshopper.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said cricket.
Every girl wants this as a kid. This animal.
A kitty cat?
No, more
A dog,
majestic
a puppy,
ish.
a unicorn.
Yeah, less majestic.
Dang, apparently I didn't want this as a kid.
Time's up. Pony.
Oh, a pony. Okay.
How are you? Your score's apparently 0 because I didn't know how to do this.
I definitely got like at least 3.
Yeah, maybe 3. So
Okay.
what, 3? Okay. We're gonna go one more round,
Okay.
and this time we're just gonna switch off each one.
Cool. Alright, get ready.
Last round.
Oh!
Whale.
Yeah. Oh, it's an aphrodisiac.
Oyster.
Yeah. I don't even know what this is. Oh, but I said it was correct.
Of course. Donkey.
No, kind of in the family of that. I have
Zebra?
antlers.
Oh, deer.
Yeah. Okay.
Bee. Bumblebee. Hummingbird.
No, I'm going to what like a bird?
Fly like
Yeah. You said it like.
Oh, fly. I was like, what flies like a bird? A bird?
I don't know how to. Okay, there we go. I gave you one on accident.
What the hell? You're like stabbing in the air. Hornet.
Snakes.
Oh my goodness.
Apparently you got porpoise.
Okay.
What's a porpoise?
Like a dolphin of some sort? Here we go.
Okay.
Last round. That was not fair.
Oh, you know, I was thinking anteater.
I got lots of eyes. And lots of legs.
Spider.
Yeah. How do you say that you got it?
You just tap the screen.
This one. There's no sound. It's very spiky back.
Oh, porcupine.
Yeah.
love the movement that you did too, because that was pretty awesome.
Think Game of Thrones. Majestic. No, not majestic. More like tormenting.
Bull. Dragon.
Okay. Second part.
Snake. Dragonfly.
Yes.
Oh.
They're all saying pass from now. Apparently, I don't know.
Gosh darn it! Stop passing.
Ooh, time's up. So I think you got like 4 on that one.
Okay.
Nice. I think it's safe to
Cool.
say you won on that one.
Yeah.
Not bad, not bad. How do you think that first round of game went?
That was
Wasn't too
good.
bad. I just have to apparently figure out how to give you points for getting it right.
I keep getting denied,
keep
guys.
getting denied. I don't know why.
Gosh darn it.
So now I would like to get into a life worth living. So one of the big things I'm switching up here is getting more to depth of what we're talking about now is how people can, no matter what job they have, no matter what they're doing, how do you make a more quality life? So we'll start off with what quality do you value the most? Usually I find people either value the career they currently have, the relationships they currently are in, or their side hustle, whether that's like traveling or starting a podcast. Which one is kind of priority for you right now?
At the moment, relationships. It used to be career until I realized that I was putting my career before anybody else, even myself. And then I realized that building a relationship is part of it. Oh,
Excuse the little doggies.
the little kitties.
No barking.
They're so cute. I just realized that building relationships goes hand in hand with careers. Like if you're not likable, you're not outgoing, and you don't have any relationships with anybody, what there's no meaning behind the career and the job, I feel, in my opinion. And so I've been really trying to be better at building and maintaining genuine relationships, because I think it's also it's very easy to just get lost, especially out here in Los Angeles. You get lost in your career and get lost in that hustle, and you're so focused, which is amazing, but then there's like no meaning behind it, because the relationships are what builds, like, I don't want to say like the foundation, but almost in a sense. And so, yeah, having an amazing relationship with my mom and my sister is just kind of like having that support, right? And so when you have that support, you're almost more at peace, like with yourself, and you feel like, okay, I can do this. You feel so much more motivated into pushing everything else in your life, like your career and your side hustle and your hobbies and all of that. And then even friends, like you have better relationships with your friends, and then you can go out and that's building a balance between work and life. And when you have that balance, I feel like you're able to execute the work and execute the career and execute the quote unquote the difficult things when you have a strong relationship with your family, your friends, and even other coworkers and other people that maybe aren't your best friends.
Yeah. How do you make sure that doesn't get away from you and you do build those strong relationships?
To genuinely care about the other person's life and try to help them further whatever, maybe their health or their career, or just be interested in their likes and interests, because I feel like if you have a connection with somebody and you're genuinely interested in them, that kind of reflects on yourself as well too. And so since I've really realized that, okay, let's say one of my best friends, she was going through a really, really difficult time, and I tried to be there as much as possible for her. And in the beginning, honestly, if it was like 5 years ago, I probably would not have been there as much for her if this happened 5 years ago, because I would have been so focused on my career and been like, I don't have time, like I love you, you're such an amazing friend, but I can't be there for you because I'm so busy and there's a lot of things that I need to focus on for myself. But now when I kind of try to be more genuinely into her life and helping her out, it actually helped me out as well too, into realizing like, oh snap, like some of the issues that she's going through, I can totally relate, and helping her through her problems also made me help me through my own problems that I didn't even know existed. So that's kind of where I realized like relationships really do matter.
Okay, interesting. Have you ever had, when you were trying to figure that out and what you were prioritizing, have you ever had good experiences on feedback on when someone felt like you really reached out to them, and bad feedback where that's kind of what got you into that? That makes sense.
Yeah, really great feedback because I love being able to be a part of a person's success story.
So that's why I do all this.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so rewarding.
Yeah, it's so rewarding. It's such an amazing feeling, and you're also able to kind of take a step back and be like, wow, I had an effect, I had an impact on that person's life, but also like that impacted me in a huge way. And so my friend, excuse me, going back to my friend who was going through a difficult time and I helped her through it, she was just like, holy crap, like you literally changed my life. And that was not my intention. I just wanted to be there for my friend. But then looking at that, I'm like, wow, that's actually really an amazing feeling and I appreciate that. But then I thought, well, she made a huge impact on my life because me being able to help her through that, like kind of brought more of my internal issues right in front of me. So that was kind of like a really, really good feedback, kind of going a little deeper. But something that maybe wasn't as positive was kind of on the opposite spectrum when I wasn't there for some of my friends that needed me at the time, and I was just so consumed in work and career and that hustle. A friend of mine had called me maybe like 2 years after, and I mean, these are just a group of my friends that I've grown up with, so it's kind of been like, you know, everybody, they have their life phases and we all live in different states, so we're not constantly in touch with each other every single day. But my friend that I wasn't there for, I had no idea what was going on in her life. And she apparently she had a really, really tough time, and she was literally like, I basically tore myself apart. And that just made me feel so terrible about me. Not that she was saying like, oh, you weren't there for me when I needed you, like never, not like that at all. But she finally had told me, like when we caught up, like she told me all the things that she went through, and I felt upset that I wasn't able to be there with her through those steps of like her being able to like, okay, overcome her issues or the problems that she had, that she didn't have anybody there for her, and it sucked that I was a part of her almost tearing herself out just because I didn't provide an ear to listen.
Yeah, I noticed it. To get us, it's a behavior change, it sounds like. So to get us to see what we're going to prioritize, you really have to have a strong behavior change and an experience that ties with that in order to want to seek that out. So that's cool how you said relationships was your thing, and it took going through that bad experience, which most people might just take as it's bad now, I'm just going to crawl in the hole. Mm-hmm. And you took it as like, I don't want to be this type of person. I want to change who I am and how I do it. And you did it for the better, and that's really cool to see that. And I think it's something people should take note of if you are trying to add more quality to your life. Is what's your behavior change? What are you the type of person, and how do you do those types of things? Because like now, because relationships is your priority, if I say, oh, Sophie's not the type of person that would go above and beyond for that person, like hell no, you're so tied to that now that like you're gonna make sure you go out of your way to do it because now it's a priority. Mm-hmm. So I always try and tell people to do that because it helps them become that person they want to be. Mm-hmm. What do you do when something no longer becomes fun for you?
Like as in a certain activity or just like anything in general?
Let's say you had like a little hobby or something, like you were doing the traveling or picking up a new skill or hobby, and then it starts kind of going dull. What do you do then? Do you just keep going with it? How do you know when to say goodbye to it? All that kind of stuff.
I just feel like if I'm not excited about something like right off the bat, why do it? And if it's something, when it comes to traveling, I mean, I love traveling and I think everybody should travel because it opens your mind so much, and just like being able to be culturally diverse mentally and physically in that sense, it's an amazing feeling. So let's say with traveling, it's starting to kind of get dull. I'll like think about, where am I going? And is there another place that I can go to that's going to get me excited rather than, oh man, I don't feel like going here again, or I don't feel like doing this again or doing that. And it's kind of just like maybe still doing the activity or speaking to like a certain person or whatever, but how it's approached, just kind of changing that up and kind of building up the excitement. But I mean, in general, if it doesn't excite me in the beginning, I'm like, I'm not even gonna, what's the point?
Okay. How could people, because that's the big thing I notice, is we get stuck in these, for lack of a better phrase, like these 9 to 5, like I go to work, come home, make dinner, sleep, repeat, and we just get stuck in that. And instead of, we know it's wrong, or if we want to do more, let's say you've always wanted to travel, but you just keep doing that eat, sleep, repeat. We know we don't want it, yet we don't leave that. We get so comfortable in it. How can someone get out of that negative loop and like incorporate more traveling into their life, or figuring out whatever, doing it more fulfilled and finding those joyful moments?
Yeah, I mean, comfort is a huge part of it, and I know finances are as well too, because I'm sure like everybody would be like, I'd love to just pick up and go wherever I want, or go and watch like this amazing show. But like, fact of the matter is, a lot of stuff does cost money, and that causes stress. So I think it's really just like flipping the mindset of, okay, yeah, I have my regular eat, sleep, repeat, that comfort, like I have this blanket, but this is what I need to do to survive. That, I think, already is the mindset that just needs to be taken out, and kind of goes back into what I was saying about focusing on the now and being in the moment, and just like reflecting on your life. Like, let's say, okay, you wake up at 7 in the morning, you leave for work at 8 o'clock, you gotta get there at 9, right? And then you get back home. Let's say you work until 6, right? You get home maybe around 7, you cook dinner, you eat, and then you go back to sleep, and that's your entire cycle. And that's a lot of people, that's majority of people. But they're not really thinking about the now, I feel. And if you're thinking about that moment, like if you're really happy in that, that's amazing. Keep doing that, do you, that's awesome. But if not, just like take a step back and maybe go out in nature.
Because there are, for those that were, it's the financial issue, I've noticed, going back to your thing on relationships, it's not necessarily like, oh, I get to go to Hawaii, I get to fly in a helicopter. It's not the things, while although those are nice, it's the experience. Who are you doing it with, and what are you making out of that experience? So
yeah, and so just thinking about like you're really, like you said, think about the relationships and building off of that. I mean, maybe the other day or a couple weeks ago, I was like, I had recently moved, and I was like, you know what, I just moved and I'm kind of financially like, because moving is expensive.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I wanted some of my friends to come and see my place, and so we ended up all gathering up, like all my friends came together. We ended up just watching a movie like on my laptop that we streamed for free, and it was so much fun. We didn't spend any money, we didn't really do anything like that, but it's just getting out of that cycle of doing something fun or like that enjoys you. Go hiking or go out in nature, go out exercise, or do something like that maybe will help to change your life up or open up your mind.
Oh, for sure. And it is such little, and really, again, it's the simple things that are the solution. And like you said, be more present, find something. Like for me, I love just kicking it with my friends. Like you said, I could just have them come over. Some of my best memories are the times that they just came over, because sometimes it did escalate to something else, like, oh, let's go get something to eat, and then something funny or interesting happened in that moment, and you never forget about it. So yeah, like if anything, to go along that, I would say, just what did you like doing as a kid? Try and do more of that, because you didn't have money as a kid. Maybe your parents hooked you up with stuff, but was it going out and playing? Go out and play. Like just because you're an adult doesn't mean you can't be a kid. So I love that. That's really cool. One more I want to ask in this little category is, how do you, or what was your biggest struggle in life growing up? If you had like one thing you really kind of was your chip on the shoulder.
The biggest struggle is, I would probably have to say, dealing with negative emotions. I never wanted to look at the bad things. I never wanted to be negative. I never wanted to be the downer. I never wanted to cry. I was always really, really happy, but I think I realized like at a point it was almost like a facade, just to show people like, yeah, like my life is amazing and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry.
In fact, people connect with that more.
Yeah, exactly. And so that makes you so much more relatable. And I think growing up, I had such a difficult time with that a lot of people thought, oh, she has this perfect painted life, this perfect, beautiful painted life. And that was definitely not the case at all. And I feel like, everybody has their hard times and they go through like different things, and everybody's situation is completely different. But mine wasn't the actual situation itself. It was really just a matter of the way I handled it and not allowing myself to be sad when something sad happened, or be angry if I was upset, or be frustrated. I never allowed that, and I'm still kind of battling that now.
Oh, me too.
But,
I think, I don't want to like make this agenda thing. I think guys really struggle with that. We'll get into that a little later. We put on these masks. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so true, because it's like almost like a society thing. Like, I mean, things of course are changing now, but like, especially with men, like you were saying, they have to be that like strong male figure, because then out in the public, they're gonna look like a wuss or something or whatever. And I guess for me, the way I saw it was like, okay, I've always known that I wanted to motivate people and inspire people. And I was always like, okay, if I'm gonna set a good example and if I'm going to like reach people, then I need to make sure that they see that I'm happy and that I'm living the best life that I can and that I want to, which I am, but at the same time, life is not always perfect.
And no one can connect with that. And I think, luckily, that's the shift that's happening with Instagram and everyone showing that quote-unquote perfect life. I think people are getting so sick of like, oh, this guy or girl has the perfect body and they're always on trips and they're always on doing that. You almost start white noising that out, because it's like, I've got nothing in common with you. Like, I'll follow you just because it's kind of cool to see your pictures, but other than that, like, you would never understand me. I doubt we'd even be friends. And now people are starting to show that darker side and show that like, I'm not always happy. Like, I battle these emotions. I've had this disturbed past, and I think people need to see that, because then it shows like, how do we take that and heal from that? Like you say, recognize those are negative emotions and acknowledge them versus just burying them.
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and that affects your health too.
Oh, for sure.
If you don't release those negative emotions, it's gonna
Builds
affect
up.
And
Going back to relationships, it hurts whoever you're with, whether that's having a significant other or just your closest friends.
right.
Yeah. Well, guess what? It's time for another game.
Game time.
I need a transition song. It's game time.
Hey.
It's game time.
Hey.
It's game time, and we are going to play.
And we are going to play.
This game, what we're gonna do is, it is
boy.
called Think Fast. So it's just, I'm gonna say a word, and you're just gonna tell me two things. You're gonna tell me the first word that pops in your head that you associate with that word, and the emotion, like what's the noise or just the emotion that goes with it. So hopefully I can figure this out this time.
Don't deny me, Joe.
I know, I'll try not to. Okay.
This is exciting, guys.
Blow dryer.
Hair.
No, it's not. Watching sports.
Yeah! That was a 2-in-1.
I can't figure this thing out.
Gosh darn it. Game time.
Game time. Tailgating.
Party! Woo!
Water aerobics.
Workout. Uh-huh.
Is that what they do in water aerobics?
Yeah, I used to actually teach an aqua fitness.
Oh,
I
look
used
at
to be
you.
an aqua fitness instructor.
I'm guessing it was the elderly population.
It was the best.
Wine tasting.
Fancy. Ooh.
Gargling.
Water.
Surfing the web.
Waves. Do, 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 do.
The interwaves.
The interwaves.
Ice skating.
Fabulous. Ooh.
Ooh. Time's up. Again, I can't figure out how to. I'm gonna need you to show me real quick how, because I tapped it and it's not working for me.
Okay.
And it's embarrassing at this point.
Maybe you need the magic fingers. Okay, football. What? Oh. Correct is like more on top.
Okay,
And then
okay.
pass is the bottom. Okay.
All right, here we go.
The excitement is serious.
Go hone in.
Alright, get ready. Okay. Microwave.
Microwave. Heat.
Having a nightmare.
That's all I got here.
No words.
No words.
Pyramid.
Schemes, multi-level marketing. Give me money.
Panning for gold.
Oh, Thomas, we gotta go west and get the 49ers.
Soccer.
Goal! Football.
What was that?
That was me speaking Spanish and
Okay, let's go. Volleyball.
Volleyball. That's me hitting a ball and just sunny sun.
Sunny sun. Alright. Staring.
Intimate.
Ooh. Meditating.
Zen.
Ooh,
Oh.
that's a good.
Ooh. I guess there's not Alright, so this one, each one. So I'm gonna do one, then you do one. So we're just gonna keep passing off each one.
Okay.
Here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Making pizza.
Food. Yam. Typing.
Secretary.
Yeah.
It's getting hard. Boating.
Kayak. I don't
Scooping ice cream.
Frosting a cake. Speaking of.
I think of swimming in a bath of frosting.
It's okay. I said kayak for boating. So I think we're even on that one.
Tripping.
Fall. Ooh. Okay. Gosh darn it. Tennis.
Wimbledon. Fly fishing.
Water.
It's very speedful.
Things. Tying your shoes.
Struggles as a kid. Did not come easy.
Enough said.
Scissors.
Cut. Time.
Is up. Woo! Okay.
That was a great one.
Not bad. Not bad. Went all smooth.
Yeah.
I know the phone's giving us problems again.
Okay.
Okay.
Happiness.
Yeah. So the final section I want to get into is a very deep topic. Vulnerability. All right. It's everything. We're kind of getting into it. Yeah. From masks we wear, stuff like that. So that's what I'd like to open with is what masks, kind of going off the struggles you were saying as a kid. So you said your struggle was the negative emotions. Was there usually have a defense mechanism for that? So for you, what was the mask you wore as a kid to cover that up, or whatever vulnerability you had?
I mean, I still do this to this day, and I'm sure some other people probably relate to this as well too. But anytime I would feel uncomfortable or even upset, I would just start laughing. That would just be my mask, and I would do it like intuitively, like it would just happen, and I would feel like, okay, this is the right thing that I need to do. That I'm just going to laugh, and I think I never really intentionally did it. It was just kind of like one of those, oh, I'm feeling upset. You just like that, like I was feeling just like that. And I would just start laughing, and then I think it would make me feel better by laughing and being happy, but then I never really came forth to addressing the issue of what was making me feel sad or upset in the first place.
Yeah, for me, along similar lines, I would just a lot of times when I'm nervous, I don't take the time to stop and digest what people are saying. So if you either asked a question or said something and I was nervous or uncomfortable, I would sometimes I would laugh, but I would just go, yeah. And it could be, there was one time where I was my rowing coach, I rowed in college, and we're in the gym, and he was like, oh, Joe, can you go get a ball for us? And I guess I was just nervous in that moment. I went, yeah. And I just stood there. And he was like, Joe, you gonna go do it? No. Yeah. And I just kept doing it. And then my friend was like, Joe, go get the basketball. That's what he's asking you. And like, I finally stopped and listened, and I was like, oh yeah, all right, cool.
Okay, guys.
So I tend to do that. And also I like to use self-deprecation jokes to kind of like cover up.
Yeah, there was a time, my friends were actually kind of making fun of me for this, it's funny. My sister and I got into an argument at school, and because she would always take my clothes, and at the time, she's my older sister, and so at the time she was a lot bigger than I was really small, and so I would get so upset, because my mom would always make us like buy our own clothes and buy our own things and stuff like that, so I'd be like, oh, you're taking my clothes, like, I just bought that, like, I haven't even worn it yet, and so I got really angry at her, and so she just lashed out on me at school, like in public in front of everybody, and made me feel so uncomfortable. I just started laughing. Yeah, like literally uncontrollable laughter, and my friends were like, so that was a little creepy, I'm not gonna lie.
Too much?
Yeah, like you could have just been like, okay, let's relax, let's calm down, but instead, like out of nowhere, I just started bursting out laughing.
Nice. So then how do you kind of heal from that? So what are you doing now to not do that?
I try to meditate in the morning and at night. It's not always the greatest, so it doesn't happen every single day. But I generally do try to wake up in the morning with some kind of like guided meditation or anything like that to kind of just relax my whole body and my mind. And I feel like it also helps me be a little bit more in tune with all of my emotions, like the entire spectrum of it. And not that it necessarily helps me, not that it like makes me face any of the negativity that I had in my past, but like to kind of breathe it in and breathe it back out, to feel it. And I think I just like what I mostly needed to was just to kind of quiet my mind of just, okay, push it down, laugh it out, just smile and be happy, rather than that, just be like, okay, I have this, or I was upset or whatever, cool, that happened, get over it. I felt that, or I allowed myself to kind of feel that and how to feel it, and then just kind of like let it go. So I think the meditations in the morning and then at night kind of just helps. But I think I should still try to work on letting myself cry often.
Yeah. It's actually, I haven't even done the last time I really cried. That's good.
Yeah.
But that's cool. It goes back to what you were saying about learning to be present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always learned when it comes to those negative emotions and us trying to put them away, it's not that you want to put them away, because the more you stuff something down, it's like a diet, right? The more you tell yourself not to eat something, guess what? It's the more it's on your mind. Mm-hmm. The moment you put light on the situation and acknowledge that it's there, it can go away, because then you can recognize it, identify it, and then move on. And that's what I think really helps.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into, because we put on these masks, it makes us feel like we're not good enough, because we can't be ourselves. Why do we get that? Why do we not feel good enough when all we have to do is be ourselves?
Because I feel like it's human nature to just compare everything. Just not just aspects of our lives, but like our characteristics and like what we do and how we say things and what we eat and everything. And especially because now we live in such a digital world, we see, kind of going back to what you were saying about like social media, we see what's being put out there and we're like, wait a second, but they're living this amazing life, but I'm not living that, and why? That's not fair. And you know, that's like, I aspire to live like that and be like them and do that. But you never know what's happening behind closed doors. And I think it's really just a matter of realizing like everybody has their own problems, everybody has issues, and nobody's is any greater than anybody else's. And I think like once you kind of realize that, you're just kind of like, I don't care.
That's true.
Let me just be me and live my life. And then I think that will translate to not only like your everyday life, but to other people as well too. And they're like, okay, if this person can be so carefree or whatever, we're still gonna compare no matter what. Like it's literally like in our blood to do that. I think everybody has compared themselves to somebody else at one point in their life. And it's really just a matter of, you can still compare. I mean, you shouldn't, but you're going to anyways. Still do that, but also just realize like, oh, but you know what? cool, whatever, like, that's them, that's me. For that split second, I compared my life, but then what can I do to just make it that much better for me? Or what I'm doing or my life that much better?
And also, it's when you're comparing yourself, you're not going to be as good as being that person better than they are at it. Like, you can't be better at being someone else than they are. That's who they are, and you're
Right.
who you are. And it takes just as much. This was kind of the shake-up moment for me. Was it takes just as much, if not more, energy for me to pretend to be like, oh, I'm this professional. Like, oh, hi, how are you? I don't want to say anything that might be me, but might throw people off. It takes more energy to do that, so you might as well just be yourself, because people might not like that version of you either.
Yeah.
So it's not everyone's gonna like you. You just gotta be yourself and be happy with that. And the people who deserve to be around you will be there.
Right.
That's cool. When we're interacting with people, do you have any tricks or tips that you do to kind of help yourself loosen up and be like more open to them versus just like for me, when I meet someone new, I tend to just be that super professional, like my parents taught, like be respectful, do this, do that, instead of I'm just gonna be Joe, I'm gonna say weird stuff.
Yeah, listen, I think that's the biggest thing, because especially when you meet new people, it's the same thing. Like, let's say you and I just first met and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say, or like kind of small talk makes me awkward, or I want to make sure that I come off the right way. But you're feeling the same exact way too. Like, we're both in the same exact position. So majority of the time, if you're just listening to the other person speaking, they can read that. Also, what I have learned too is asking advice helps, because that also creates more movement in a conversation, and is more, it'll help to become more genuine as well. And you can like learn a lot from a person if you're asking advice. Like, it could be the smallest thing, like, oh, my cat just pooped in the carpet, I don't know how to get him to stop. Like, do you know anything about that or whatever? Like, if maybe like a conversation about cats. Of course I would be talking about cats, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it could be like little things like that, because then they feel like you're genuinely interested in what they have to say and their opinions, and we all need that. We all need that kind of interaction.
Yeah, that's so true. One, because people do like, I don't mean this in a cocky way, but people like to talk. People like to talk about themselves. So if you're asking for advice, it means you want their guidance on something. So people are way more willing to talk if you do that. So that's really cool. And like we just saw here, the cat pooped. If you can, not a requirement, but if you can make it humorous, even if you think it's so ridiculous, that's even better, because then we're like, wow, the fact that this person is willing to ask something so unusual lets me read into them more. Because no one wants to see someone that acts very suit and tie and like, hey, I'm trying to fix the crown molding on my house, and I wanted to use this and that. It's like, oh, this is getting kind of dry. I've seen that where people I just click with, like, we're just silly from the get-go, and we're like the best of friends within 2 minutes, whereas other people where I'm not acting like myself and I'm very like held off, and there's stuff where I know in my head I'm like, oh, I'd love to react like this, and I don't. I see that I'm just losing them. They don't find me that interesting.
Yeah.
We just lose grip of the whole situation. What would your life look like if it wasn't, I guess you were kind of touching on this, if it wasn't based on what other people think? What is like Sophie at her pinnacle? Like, I don't care what anyone thinks, this is how I would act.
So you're asking me how I would be acting if...
yeah, I guess so. Like, what kind of life would you lead? What kind of attitude would you have?
Okay, so I have this alter ego. And so my Sophie, everyday, regular, like, I mean, it is a part of me. Like, I'm very, like, happy and outgoing and smiling and all of that. And I like to make people feel good and, like, crack random jokes that aren't good, but people laugh because they're just so bad. But then I have this other alter ego that, like, I'll, like, tune her in when it's Halloween and like, certain things or something like that. But she's just, like, this complete badass person. Literally, like, a superhero, like, one of those, I forget the terminology, starts with a V.
I'm not sure.
But basically, like, you know, she'd go down the streets and, like,
vigilante?
Yeah, vigilante. Yeah, she's like a straight up vigilante. And I would just be like beating up people who deserve it.
I should have made you come here in your costume, if you even have one, and interview that Sophie. That would
Yeah, for sure. Like she's just very like this dark person, and like in my mind I created her as like someone who had a very dark past, but like a lot of people can relate to her because she went through so much crap in her life, but now she's like honed that and turned that into like positive by, you know, messing with like all the bullies and being like, oh, you shouldn't do this.
And we'll call you vulnerability woman. Boom,
yeah,
you're gonna be yourself.
Let me punch you out.
I'm gonna punch the mask off of you and turn you into the true you. That's
basically.
Awesome. Yeah, mine is, I think I'm gonna change that question to who is the dancing in the mirror version of you when no one's looking? Because that's what it is. Like, oh man, me when like, I always think of when I was a kid, and here's my full vulnerability. I would have like Backstreet Boys playing and singing this stuff that was like very poppy, very dancing 90s. I think no one's home. I think my brother's not there. Close the door, I've got it blasted, and I had mirrors in my room because of my closet, and I was just like full on, just boom, boom, Backstreet's back, and like I was getting into it, and I've done it before with like my really close friends, and they're all always dying laughing. They love that version of me. They're always looking for that. But then like, you know, you shut it off because someone comes to the door and you're like, I wasn't doing anything. But that's the real Joe for me that I try and bring out. So I always look for opportunities.
Yeah,
I don't have a name for that yet. Maybe just Breakdance Joe or something.
Oh, I like that.
B-Boy Joe, what's up?
B-Boy Joe. That's cool.
Let's see. How do you take emotional risks?
I don't. Let me rephrase that. I definitely did not at all until pretty recently. And I guess my way of taking your question is kind of going back to like letting out my negative emotions. And that is a huge emotional risk for me. So when my boyfriend and I first started dating, we had like this conversation. I was like, I don't know, like I don't really cry, like it makes me feel uncomfortable, blah blah blah. And then the other day he said something. It wasn't like it was the stupidest thing, but it didn't make me feel good. And I was just like, instead of just like brushing it off like I would usually, I went out and I told him, like, listen, like that wasn't really cool. This made me kind of feel some type of way. I knew that was not your intention at all because you're like just joking around or whatever. And then I just started like just to let myself cry, and I was like, holy smokes! And he was just like looking at me like, I've never seen you like this. I'm so sorry, blah blah blah. And I guess like that's when he realized like, oh snap, like I probably shouldn't have said what I said. And again, it really was not like a big deal, like I guess quote unquote to the norm, it's not that big of a deal, but to me at that moment, and I guess where I was, like it just didn't translate the right way. And I was like, holy crap, I think this was just like a buildup of everything else that I had held in. And it was just like the one little small thing that he said that just like completely ticked that. And so that was a huge emotional risk for me to just like completely let myself like cry like that. And it felt good afterwards. And we're like, oh, perfect.
That just brought up a huge aspect I didn't even think of asking is, for those of us in relationships, how do we, because that's the biggest thing, right, is learning to be emotionally vulnerable and open communication. And like you were saying, I guess, I'm assuming up to that point, you weren't quite there with him. How do you, in a relationship, what's your advice for how do you hit that moment where it's like, I'm gonna be, like, what made you willing to take that risk?
I think it was knowing that if the roles were switched, that I would love and appreciate if that ever happened to him. Like, because, you know, we're not perfect. Like, sometimes we're just gonna stick our foot in our mouth or like make a mistake or do whatever. But as long as you're like open to accepting it, or not necessarily accepting it, but open to understanding it, I think that plays a huge role. And I think something just switched in my mind where I was like, if something, God forbid, were to ever happen and he comes to me and confides in me and I don't necessarily agree with him, how would I take it? Like, would I be open to understanding, or would I just be like, okay, wait, we don't have similar interests, or we don't have similar likes, or we don't have a similar mindset, rather than thinking of that, being like, oh, you know what? Like, I like you enough to actually be willing to understand your point of view, even though I don't agree with it. And so once I learned that, I feel like that's when the flip switched, and then I was like, oh, well, I feel like maybe he might be cool with me just letting go, and then my body just kind of let it happen, and the tears started flowing.
Vigilante Sophie came out.
Vigilante Sophie came out, and I went to beat him up. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, and then after that, it was just really cool because it's just like, wow, we actually have a really open communication because we understand, or we're trying to make sure that you understand each other, even if you know that like you don't agree with them all the time.
Okay, perfect. That was I'm gonna have to add that to my question list because that's huge. Is relationship openness.
Yeah.
Final question I like to end this on. It's a new one. It used to be mine action get, but now the new route this is going, I'm switching it up. What was your, in general, whether it's through your career, through your relationships, through vulnerability, whatever you feel applies, what was your aha moment? So I guess we need a little more specific. What was your aha moment for finding Vigilante Sophie Cook?
Do you want me to tell like the story?
Sure.
Or what happened? Okay, so I haven't really told very many people this. Only like people that I've had like really in-depth, like long conversations. When I first moved here, I was doing when I first moved to Los Angeles, I was doing really, really well. And I was like, within the first month that I lived here, I like booked a tour, I was dancing, I was doing a lot of crazy things. And it was amazing. I was doing what I came out here to do. But then I ended up, I had a tumor in my ear, and the doctor was like, if you don't take this out, your skull is going to collapse.
Damn.
Yeah. And I was like, cool, this is awesome, but it sucks. So it took me out of the game of what I loved and what I wanted to do for a pretty long time. And it didn't affect me only physically, but it impacted me a lot more mentally, I feel like, than it did physically. And I kind of had to like almost rewire myself, and that's when I just realized that I was like, no matter how much you plan your life has its own plan for you. And that's when I woke up and I realized like I need to just be cool with negativity. Like I don't want to say be cool with negativity, but like be okay when something bad happens, because when that happened, I had no idea what to do. Because like, yeah, I've had my issues, I've had my problems, but it's kind of like the normal things that people almost deal with when they grow up, whether it's like something that happens with your family or your parents, or something happens with your friend. But when it's a health issue that's happening just within yourself and it's only you, that nobody else is involved in, that's when it's the most, I think, in my opinion, is when that was like the most difficult thing, because especially since my career is so physical. And that really kind of just woke me up and made me realize like, yeah, I've always known that I want to inspire people and I want to motivate people and I want to perform and entertain and all of that. But rather, I want to try to also reach people with my words, but also move them with actions. And I felt like what I was doing in the beginning was great, but I was doing it so much because I was good at it, and yes, I loved it, but I didn't know if I was really moving as many people as I wanted to. And it kind of goes back to the whole like negative emotions and pushing down like all the bad things. And that's when I just realized, I'm like, I feel like maybe a part of this thing that was like in my head is like a buildup of all of the little things that just turned into physical form. And that really woke me up. And that's when I realized like, okay, I need to be better at holding on to relationships more, and holding on to being more in tune with other people and my own emotions, because you learn from other people. And that was probably my aha moment.
Ooh, very cool. That is a very good story.
Thanks.
And that's where that kind of rounds us off, because that's what we said in the beginning, is you need that emotional connection, whether it's a story or a moment or whatever, that totally rechanges the way you see your life and how it needs to be lived. So thank you. If people want to reach out to you, what is your social handles or websites or any way to get a hold of you?
At So Cookin'. I'm doing like the cooking movement. Yeah, that's my Instagram, SOCOOKIN. There's no G, same as my Snapchat, and then Facebook. I think it's like Sophie Cook or So Cookin', something like that. Or yeah, I think if you just write in So Cookin', I'll probably pop up. But,
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Sophie, thank you for coming in.
Yeah!
How was this new experience in the games? How did it feel?
I liked it. I think it was a good like little comedic relief in the perfect moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Sweet.
Thanks
Awesome.
for having me, Joe.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.